We look ahead to round 9, Hawthorn in Tasmania, Saturday, 1:45. Hawks coming off a win. At times, they've looked like a pretty decent team. At times, they've looked like a pretty awful team. So it's going to be interesting to see what team comes out to face us on Saturday. I think to kick off, why don't we start with some of the awards and maybe we'll start with the Jason Blake Award and players who, for any new listeners this week, players who you think deserve some more credit or appreciation.
I was probably going to look at Josh Battle. I mean, I couldn't fit him into the vote this week, and that's probably part of the reason why I'll give it to him this week. As I think we were saying last week, it's been probably his best season to date. And out of the usual defenders who get spoken about most weeks, that sort of thing, it can be forgotten at times. But yeah, the job he's been doing this year has been fantastic down there, and just week in, week out, he's doing the job that's required of him. And again, another good game on the weekend, and managed to keep, I guess the their forward line pretty quiet, and yeah, popped up everywhere. Even had, as I say, almost kicked the first goal of the match as well, which it was pretty close. So, but yeah, just an overall first 8 weeks of the season job so far that he's done. It's what is it, a third of the season? Be the best start to a season or best overall that he has probably for his career so far.
Phil, what have you got?
For the Jason Blake Award, welcome back, son, Mason Wood. It was so good to see him out there, and it looked to me like he was running as well as he ever has, and just needs a little bit of touch. But gee, it was great to have him provide that link play. We've missed it.
Yeah, look, I wanted to give a little bit of credit to Seb Ross. I think he's one of those guys that we tend not to talk about until he has a bad game. And when he has a bad game or doesn't deliver to, I guess his usual standard, tends to cop a little bit, and guys come out of the woodwork and tend to slam him. But I thought he's been pretty good over the majority of this season to date. I think he's been consistent. He works hard. He runs hard. And like I said, we just don't talk about him a lot unless he's not performing. But when he is performing, he's playing his role, he's potentially not that noticeable because he's playing a role. He's very consistent. His average performances are pretty good. And I think that we've just become used to that over the last decade or so. And so when he does play well and he plays his role, we probably tend to gloss over it or miss it or forget about it a little bit. And so Seb Ross was my one this week. The Shannon Knoll Lift Award, again, for any listeners who are new this week, someone who's got a lift. Phil, why don't you kick us off with this one?
So I have a bit of a man crush on the guy I'm giving the Shannon Knoll Award to this week. And I'm pained to say it, but young Mitch Owens has to provide a little bit more. He's still getting to contests, and I know that he's creating the ball spilling to the ground, which is great, but he's not quite been as clean as he has been, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for him to be a lot cleaner in the contest. But again, that might be as a direct result of the performances that he's given, and the time that opposition coaches are now putting into him. But Mitch, I'd like to see him lift a little, please.
H?
It's probably a similar sort of thing. Mitch was definitely one that was in contention this week. From what we, as I say, we know what he can provide us. It's a little bit off, but in the absence of a couple of other players in the way of Butler and Higgins, Mateus needs to be putting a little bit more forward pressure on. He's only had 5 touches, which if, say, Butler only has 5 touches or something like that, it usually cops a bit of a flack, but then a lot will defend him saying, but he put so much forward pressure on. He tackled, he did this, he did that. unfortunately, Mateus was one of the 4 players who didn't lay a tackle on the weekend. The 1%ers, he didn't have any. So it was just a little bit of, I guess, what we heard before, saying if you don't have the ball, you need to get the ball, or you need to put pressure on the player with the ball. And it just didn't seem to be happening. It just didn't seem to be in his game or mindset to, if I haven't got it, I've got to hunt down someone who does, or get to somewhere so I can get it. Or it was just a bit of, I guess, traveling along and just going with the flow of the game, that sort of thing. So he's just got to step up and make the ball his target, and take it in his own hands rather than just going and just hoping for it to come to him at some point or something. Just, not sure if there's a bit of, I guess, fatigue there or something, but yeah, just if you don't have it, you've got to put pressure on someone that does.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you guys. And I think that was kind of my angle this week was, I do find it hard to bag the young blokes. I know that so often we see, second year blues and those sorts of things. And maybe it's time that those guys need a bit of a break. They've played a lot of footy in the last 2 years. Mateus Filippo is still one of the youngest blokes in the league, despite being in the league for a year already. Maybe it is. Maybe he does need a break. Maybe Mitch needs a break. There's been a lot of expectation. There's been a lot of media. He got a lot of credit and a lot of praise last year, and maybe that expectation is getting to those 2 kids a little bit. I think under any kind of normal, regular circumstance, they might have had a week off or a couple of weeks off already, but due to our injury list, which obviously is looking a lot better from now on, there wasn't really a huge amount of guys who were able to come in. And so, we're kind of limited in our ability to make changes week to week. So, yeah, I would love to see a bit more out of Mitch and Mateus. I think they're quality players. I think they're quality kids, and they're going to have very, very good careers for us. But maybe it's just getting to them a little bit. Maybe the pressure's a bit too much, and maybe they just need a week or 2 off and get back to the twos, get back to Sandy, and go and get the ball, go and have an impact and get your confidence back up. Because both of those guys look to be, I think obviously Filippo's out of form. He's shown glimpses, but certainly not the same player he was last year. And Mitch just hasn't been the same dynamic force that we saw, that seemed to be, a gravitational force in our forward line where the ball just found him in all moments that he needed. He would rise to the occasion, and just doesn't seem to have that in him at the moment, whether it's, too many miles in the legs and whatever, or expectation, or just the second year blues, third year blues, I think in his case, because he did play a game also the previous year. But those 2 young blokes, I think, are going to be incredible players for us. But there's a lot of pressure on them to perform, and hopefully now with a few guys coming back, that some of that pressure might be lifted on them. Speaking of some of those guys looking to come back, we got some good news on the weekend. It sounded like it was going to be a pretty rough weekend. Watching the Sandy game, and I think a lot of the reports coming out that Hunter Clark had done a knee and Matt Allison had done a foot or a leg at some point as well. But it seems like both those guys have managed to miss serious injury, and Hunter Clark even is a test to come into the seniors this week, which is a great sign for a guy who doesn't seem to have had much luck over the course of his career since coming into senior footy. But our injury list, if you look at it compared to what it was 6 weeks ago, is chalk and cheese. I mean, there's most guys that we've been waiting to come back, with the exception of Brad Crouch, who's still a couple of weeks away, and Dan Butler, obviously, who's a couple of weeks away still. A lot of those key players, Liam Henry's off the list completely. Obviously, Jack Hayes came back last week. Mason Wood came back last week. Max King's been off it. We're getting the bulk of our guys back, and that is going to make so much of a difference to our fortunes moving forward. Not just the ability to have our best players out in the park, but having those other guys, the borderline 23 to 26 to 30, getting regular game time in their positions in the twos, and being able to play full games. What does that mean for Angus Hasty, who hasn't played a full game for God knows how long? All of these things that we have the ability to get guys back playing full games of footy, learning and developing their craft in the twos. so that they're ready to come back in, when the opportunity arises. But a few of those guys coming back last week, obviously really important. But looking at that list, that injury list this week, it looks even better.
Yeah, as we were discussing last week, these players are just going to keep coming back, and it just creates that situation of we then have players fighting for positions. We then have players needing to play well to hold those positions. The VFL side had a win on the weekend. So there's some pretty good performances in it. Question then goes back again to how is Dow going? Sounds like he might be another week away. There's questions over whether he's completely match fit yet or what's going on. But yeah, they're just going to continue to put pressure on the players in the side. So let's just hope that means good performances from these players. It means they're going to try and hold their position. They're going to really actually maybe dig a bit deep in what they have in those other few weeks where it's been a bit of, I'm probably not going to lose my spot in the team here if I don't perform well, sort of thing. So it's going to create, as I was saying, a really good situation for us, and it's give us a good crack at the second half of leading into the second half of the year, and actually maybe start winning some of these close games, start winning the matches that we expect to win, pinch a couple others that we maybe aren't expected to win. It's all leading good ways, and just hope from here that it's a good run for the players who are in.
Now, speaking of a good run, and Phil, I guess to reiterate how important this game is this week, I think we've spoken in the past about the run home kind of after the bye week in round 15. I think 80% of our games are at Marvel on the run home, which is huge. But over the next month before the bye, obviously Hawthorn in Tassie, we've got Fremantle at home at Marvel, Melbourne at the G, obviously that's going to be very tough. West Coast away in Perth, Gold Coast at home at Marvel, Brisbane at the Gabba, and we know that they're kind of ravaged by injuries at the moment. They're not playing their best footy, leading to the bye in round 15. But these are the games that we need to be winning to not just get back onto level pegging and equal record, but to have a positive win-loss record coming into the bye in a month's time would have been almost unthinkable 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, agree. I think the flip side of what H was saying about our players returning from injury is that we might actually just for a change have a little bit of luck the other way, because Hawthorn has been also ravaged of key players for them. Chol still is out. Mitch Lewis is still out. It looks like James Sicily is at best probably a 30% chance to play, given that he rolled his ankle and his shoulder popped out and they put it back in. That's, I don't care what people say. That's courage personified to have done what he did on the weekend against the Doggies and lead his team to victory. That's leadership. But then also Ned Reeves is out, and he's played well against us in the ruck before. Denver Granger Barras is back, but they've indicated they're bringing him back via the Magoos. And so it looks like the only one that is back that is the wily old fox in Luke Bruce, and he's not played since round 3, right? So he'll be short of some conditioning. But, from my perspective, maybe I'm focusing too much on Hawthorn and not enough on what we're going to do. And we've seen if we bring the heat, if they turn up and play the way that they did, like against Geelong or Port Adelaide, when they just went down, then they've got a very good chance of winning. And again, we've said this before, and I'll say this again, but as a supporter, the win and loss is certainly something that we want to see, but as long as we see the 100% effort, 100% of the time from 100% of the players, then win, lose or draw, you walk away proud of the effort they've put in. And if they've been beaten by a better side on the day, well, you shake hands with the opposition, you say well done, and you go again. What we don't want to see is another game like that we had against the Western Bulldogs a few weeks back.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I think if we turn up in that sort of shape as we did a few weeks ago, then we'll get beaten. And it's not because they're a better team than us, but they are a pretty decent midfield. I mean, you look at some of the names in that midfield, and they win the hardball. You know, guys like Warple and Newcomb, Connor Nash, Dylan Moore is in there, Connor McDonald, Josh Weddle. They know how to win the ball. They know how to win the stoppage. And if they win the stoppage, then they're a really good shot against us, even missing a bunch of those players. And it's one of those things we've spoken about it a number of times. But if we can break even in the middle, I think we're far too powerful up forward for their defence to handle. And on the other side, I think our defence is a very, very good unit and should be far too strong for their forward line, missing a few guys. So, I think that's really, it's a bit of the cliche, but that's where these games are won, in the middle. If they win the ball, if they get first hands on the ball and beat us in the clinches, then we're going to struggle. And it is something that we've struggled at this year. We have missed a lot of guys between Clark and Crouch and guys in the middle. Obviously, Steele has been a bit underdone at times, but obviously he's been pretty consistent for the most part. But a bunch of guys through the middle have missed games. And if we don't turn up, then we're in trouble, H.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw last year I don't know what we were thinking, but we just continued to bomb it to Sicily all day. And he probably had one of the games of his career that day against us. And obviously we turned around the second time against them later in the year, kicked, I think it was 9 goals in the first quarter against them, but sort of faded out as we did in the first time. If we didn't have the lead we made early on, it may have happened twice to us in the same year. It's I mean, if he doesn't play this week, we sort of go, well, there's that situation solved. But yeah, chances are they put someone else there to play that same kind of role. But we've just got to make sure that that's not what we're doing again if he does play. We don't let him just sit in the forward line unaccounted for by us, and just picking everything off. That's how he plays the game, and that's how he wins them games. So if he plays, again, we need to put, I don't know, we make someone account for him. Sharman didn't play last week. We're not sure he did the job last time. He might not be in, so we'll have to get someone else to get in there and do that. Whether that role is then given to, I don't know, Mateus. Just say, make him accountable. Your job all day is to make sure he doesn't have 15, 18 marks in the back line. If he goes to a contest, you go to a contest with him. If he finds the ball, you're there on him all the time. Basically, we look at where we lost it last year and eliminate that. And we can get, we match up with them in the middle quite well, you'd think. There's no issue there. We've got the midfielder. Windhager's he's playing better than he was last year. He's moving the ball out of there, getting the ball, the hard ball, really out of the middle. Hill's moving nicer on the outside. If Henry comes straight back in, we've got 2 runners for there, either side of him. There's options everywhere for us now. If we use them well, Hawthorn's a team that we should have no issues with. We've just got to make sure we do everything right. Don't do what we did last year. And that's probably the simplest message Ross could say. Watch what we did. Watch last year's game. Just don't do that again. And that's probably the easiest way to put it.
Now, looking at some of the ins for us this week, it does sound like Liam Henry will come straight back in. And we saw how dynamic and exciting he was in the early stage of the season before he went out with that hamstring at the end of the Collingwood game. Paddy Dow's played a couple of games now in the twos. Hasn't kind of torn games to shreds, but he has shown glimpses of burst out of stoppage, out of the middle, winning the ball and really speeding with pace through the middle, which is really exciting to see. And it'd be interesting to see if they give him another week with Sandringham or bring him straight back in. And like I touched on earlier, Hunter Clark, who's now played a couple of games as well, was a lot of consternation about a potential knee injury coming out of last week's Sandringham game, but it sounds like he's in line for a recall into the ones as well, Phil.
Yeah, so I'd like to obviously see Liam Henry come straight back in. And in fact, I think Ross Lyons said that he would on his AFL 360 gig on Monday night, that he was cherry ripe and would come back in. So I'd be interested to see them use the sub for well. Firstly, let's go back a step. Young Hasty did a great job, but if anyone's going to go out, probably it would probably be Angus Hasty at this stage, or possibly Garcia. I think he's come off the boil a little bit in the last week or so, but certainly I would have thought that Hunter would be best served coming in from the sub. So when the Stings come out of the game, if there's a need for somebody, he can play as a run and carry. He can play defender. He could play on the half forward if we needed to him. So he's got that variability about him. And it may well be that we need to give Ronnie Burns a proper run in his legs at Sandy. So, you know, I'm not looking for big changes. I don't think Paddy Dow comes in this week unless there's an injury to one of our starting mids or they want to give Seb Ross a rest. But he's only 31, Seb, and he's had a stellar year, as you alluded to earlier, Nick. So, yeah, for me, it's just it's two changes: Ronnie Burns and young Hasty being dropped, and obviously the guys I've spoken about coming in.
H, do you foresee any other changes? What do you want to see
I
this week?
wouldn't think it to be much more than that, to be honest. There's no real need to change, I guess, a winning side from last week. And yeah, I'd probably, unfortunately, I'd probably think that Hasty would be out before Garcia. I think the pressure Garcia's been putting on, I think I looked, he's sixth in average tackles per game at the moment in the league, which is huge for a guy that's played only a handful of games so far. His average got obviously wrecked by the Geelong game. Not the it was Hastings that came on the Geelong game, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, Hastings came on the first game. It was his average just got wrecked by that, sorry. But yeah, he's tackling pressure, and he's shown us so far. I mean, as I was saying before, we're missing Higgins, we're missing Butler. That he's kind of replaced them in that position a little bit, in the way of we don't have those usual small forwards pressuring. He's stepped in there, and he's just a tackling machine at the moment. So yeah, he's doing a really good job there. And I mean, Hasty's popped up for his first goal, but I just don't see Hasty holding his position ahead of him at the moment. He's definitely going to get an opportunity in time to come for sure. He's a good size. He's probably going to grow a bit bigger, and yeah, he's going to provide us something in time to come.
A couple of listener questions this week. I think we've probably spoken about much of this, but Mon has asked about our first-year draftees playing this week. Obviously, Wilson is a lock. You think Garcia and Hasty on the chopping block, and Collard maybe a chance to be picked. It's been a while since he played. I'm not sure the way that our forward line and our kind of half forwards and what have combined last week, that there's probably not a move to be made there outside of Liam Henry.
Now, if you read the report from Jake Batchelor from the Sandys game, Jake Batchelor says that in relation to Collard, he had a good game. He kicked his goals from limited opportunities, but they want to see more consistency out of him. And so I'm not sure that there's an opportunity to bring him in. I think our forward line with our crummers at the moment are doing okay. And obviously, you know, without Higgins and Butler, that's a fair commentary on where we're at too. But the other players are playing their role. And, you know, in a Ross Lyons side, you don't need to be flashy. You just need to do what he tells you to. And if you do that, then the team is going to win more times than it's going to lose.
Bobber Khan asked what to do with Pooh. I think we've probably spoken a bit about Mateus this week. And last one from Mick. Interesting one. Thoughts on bringing Sharman in as a tall defender in that Jeremy Howe role? Looked unstoppable in defence for Sandy. I mean, I think he looks good in that role at times, but also I wonder, who do you take out for him to come in that position? I think we're probably set for defenders at the moment.
Probably. I mean, he's done it for us before in the ones as well. He has played down back and played that actual role, but there's a chance you go too tall if you were to bring him in, because you're probably not dropping Howard or Wilkie or any other big. So you're pretty much bringing another big in. I guess if we go against a side who has numerous tall forwards and you need to cover another one, and I mean, you'd seem, I know, possibly going, if we're to play Geelong, he'd probably line up on maybe someone like Ollie Henry. That's probably more, I guess, maybe a matchup for his sort of size. But yeah, at the moment, you wouldn't think there's anyone you'd look and go, oh, he needs to replace him. And with the chance of Clark coming back in too, there's possibly another runner coming back in to, well, I guess, possible free up Sinclair to go into middle a little bit more at times than what he is already. I mean, we've seen him going there a fair bit. That's who we thought would probably be the one, if he's actually playing, would be replacing Sinclair in that kind of position. So it'd be more likely we have another runner than a larger defender. So yeah, that's, unless someone goes down, I don't see it happening.
Well, it is a big game, and it doesn't seem like a huge game given the where Hawthorn sit on the ladder and their projections for the rest of this season. But it is a big game for our footy club. We want to get on a bit of a run. We want to build some momentum. We want to be playing some good footy. So it is a big game for us. 1:45 in Tassie. Final thoughts, fellas. Phil, thanks again for joining us at such late notice.
No, pleasure to be here, and always happy to step up. I can never replace Darren Parkin. Maybe you, Nick Splitter, but I can never replace Darren Parkin. Can't replace you either, but it was a pleasure to come off the bench. I told my wife that I was, she said, "Why are you doing the pod again?" And I said, "Because I'm a fan fave and they called for me to do it." Little did she know it was actually because Darren just had some other things that needed to be prioritised first. But I can keep dreaming.
Very, very well said. To finish up, obviously, like I said before, if you could give us a rating and a review on whatever platform it is that you prefer. We are on socials. We're on Twitter and X. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We are on LinkedIn. If you want to follow us on LinkedIn, we are on YouTube, of course, as well, where you can watch our episodes these days. We're trying to get as many of them as possible up on YouTube. So hit subscribe there. Other than that, thanks for listening again. Hopefully we're back next week and we are getting closer to parity. Go Saints.